Welcome to the OKD Working Group meeting for August 1st of the year 2023. And my sense is we'll probably have a pretty brief meeting today. A lot of folks are on summer holiday. So let's start out with OKD release and CI/CD updates.
Yes, sure. So we are working on part of the pipeline to actually implement some layering for SCOS. This is an initiative that Christian and Vadim have initiated. There are problems because of the layering uses a pod that needs high privileges. And so we have capability issues, but we're busy working on, within OKD, looking at using the security context constraints and a special service account to get around it. But other than that, I think the pipeline's still working well now, that we will be able to do a release for the end of sprint, which is in 2 weeks' time, for both 4.14 and 4.30. And that's it from my side.
Okay. Anyone have any questions or feedback on any of those items? All right, let's move on to FCOS updates. And we don't have anybody here from the FCOS team. So let's skip that item. And moving now to SCOS updates. Do we have anything in the SCOS realm here? Nope, doesn't look like we have anybody here for that can really speak to that. Community development updates, Brian.
Okay, so we had a community meeting last week. Primarily, we talked about two things. The first was the video series, where we just went through the plans. So that is item number 38 on the planning board. So we went through the plans. We added layering as a topic. So just talk about the Core OS layering feature that come in. We use that within OKD, or so we just needed to cover that. And we also got asked to review. So if you go and look at number 38 in the planning board, there is a machine config operator video. So we got asked to go and review that and comment on that. So if anybody wants to learn about the machine config operator, there is a video there. I'll post the link to the planning board item in chat, and we'll also put it in the agenda, so anyone catching up can go and find that. But it's just within our GitHub, the OKD project GitHub, and then the planning board. You can find number 38. So that is really the video series. So that is trying to help people understand and how to self-support OKD installs, config and setup. We also did have a conversation around, do we need to do some work and come up with a second series to help users? So not people that want to install, set up, debug issues, but actually become users of the platform. So that was a conversation. We didn't really come up with a plan there, but I think it is a to-do item that in the future we need to look at the resources for people that want to use the cluster for work rather than actually installing, set up and debug the configuration of the platform, which is where the current series is focusing. And then the second thing that we covered in the meeting was the work going on operators. So we did discuss some of the challenges that we encounter, primarily because a lot of the information on what is released is within the PROW system. So we don't have access to all the exact Git commits for the actual bundles that are installed by the operators and the operators themselves. Luigi did sort of confirm that most of the operators do have branches that are good configurations for each release. So for example, a 4.13, we should find within an operator a 4.13 branch that will build the operator for a 4.13 platform, similarly a 4.14 branch with a 4.14 platform. So I'm currently looking at sort of some test operators just to see how we can go with that. So that work is slowly progressing, just trying to come up with, and once I have an end-to-end sort of path that I can do manually, we can then start looking at building the pipeline. There is a sort of an embryonic pipeline already created, which is in our repo that we can actually base work on. But it doesn't cover things like if we have to build the underlying base bundles and go through the end-to-end from the actual application into operator into the catalog. So that's that. And then the last thing that we talked about is on the agenda, which is our summer break. So I'll leave that until the agenda. I think that's everything that we covered in sort of brief. Probably just worth saying that if you're not in those meetings, you're welcome to join us, but there is a second HackMD sort of thread where we cover the community meetings. So it's probably worth just putting that if people don't know.
The only thing I would add to that is for any folks that have any spare cycles at all, it's always helpful to have another pair of eyes and hands for the discussions and issues sections in OKD project OKD. So that's where people put in issues which very often actually get converted to discussions, because a lot of time they're not actually issues, they're more discussion items, so they'll get converted a lot of times. But anytime we can get someone contributing some help to help folks in the community get their OKD installations up and running is helpful. So if you ever have a few cycles, please feel free to pop in and provide some support. I go through there. Vadim spends a fair amount of time in there, and a couple of other folks. And if we could get a couple more folks contributing, and ultimately this is what the video series is for, right? Is to get people knowledgeable about sort of the fundamentals to help guide others. So that's
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to say one more thing about there is I noticed there's some quite good information captured in some of those discussions. So I think one activity that we need to do is go and harvest them as either blog posts or documentation updates, because there's some quite useful content being put into some of those discussions, and it gets lost in the fog of stuff. So.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to start doing that. It would be, we could actually sort of create, well, what we could do is add a tag to the item like documentation, because there is a documentation label actually, so label it as that. And I think we didn't, in this meeting, talk about the blog post yet. So here's the blog post. We talked about it last week, but so that's a blog post that was written by Jacob Meng. That's basically an overview of the CI/CD of OKD, and it's really nice reading and definitely helpful to let folks know in a sort of an encapsulated fashion where we are in terms of CI/CD of building the actual OKD payloads. Anything else that we want to touch on? All right, the last thing was at the last meeting, there was discussion.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No. Go, Jamie. Go. I'll chat after you.
Okay. So August 22nd and 29th, we decided to take as break days to give folks a chance to sort of regroup and get a breather and A lot of folks are going to be on vacation at that time, so we won't have the development meeting on the 8th, or we will have the development meeting, the community development meeting on the 8th, and then we'll have one more working group meeting, and then we'll be off those last 2 weeks, the 22nd and the 29th. And I'll make sure that I delete those from the calendar later today. Anything else that folks want to talk about?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I think we did a while ago mention that Alex and myself, we built a sample operator. I'll paste the link in the chat. And if anyone's interested, it's basically, it's from zero to building a very simple sample operator that I think, if I remember, just monitors a config map. And then it helps you to build from scratch. We have a very opinionated makefile in there. It'll help you make the binary, build the bundle, and then you can use that together with the pipeline we created to actually build your everything plus the bundle to the catalog, and your artifact at the end of that will be a catalog. So have a look at it, play around, clone it, break it, change it, whatever. I think it might help for those who want to start playing around with operators and getting, especially with the operator, the building of the operators and all that type of thing. We did test it using our pipeline, and I mean, we haven't tested the catalog in a cluster yet, but that still has to be verified. But go ahead, look around, and see if that's of any help. If anyone wants to play around with it, you're more than welcome. And then just one other thing, our pillar director of engineering is really keen to find out who is using OKD. I mean, obviously not in, I wouldn't call it a production environment, but maybe a sort of serious environment where, I mean, we know the CERN guys are using it, but is there anyone else that's using it regularly within within their environments? And I think the target outcome for our director is that she wants to maybe partner with a company and work on getting and finding the pain points of OKD, and maybe, I think the biggest problem is the telemetry. And, we can't get telemetry because obviously, it is a sensitive issue. But I think it's more of finding out how could we make and improve all the things within OKD, but working in partnership with a company. I think that's what her sort of main objectives are. So if there's anyone here that's interested, and please reach out to me. I think my email's in the list. Just ping me, and we could set up a meeting and together with our director and see what next steps could be taken.
Excellent. That is fantastic. Operators are, the big issue that we want to tackle. And so having a tangible example, I think, is really super helpful. And Brian's got his work. So between the two of them, I think we've got our basics covered on understanding. And also the meeting I should link that. We should actually, maybe I'll do this in the next couple of days, is just create a page that is like all of our operators stuff. That's sort of like okay, here's a link to Brian's stuff. Here's links to the sample operator. Here's the meeting where we got such a great overview of operator construction and stuff like that. What was that, month and a half ago or whatever? And just have all of that in one place so that anyone can sort of bootstrap themselves into sort of where we are and what we need. All right. Anything else that we want to talk about? All right. Well, thanks so much, folks. This was a quick meeting. And as Brian mentioned, yeah, anyone that wants to, if you're not already joining the community development meetings, feel free to show up at those. Those are more sort of following the project cards and, working on things to increase the usage of OKD and the community engagement. So, all right. Talk to you all next time.
Thanks, guys.